Thank you, Ellen. For this morning, for our connection from the faith formation, our question for week 11 is, in what area would you like to grow? So would you please get with someone and discuss that topic for just a little bit? There it is up on the screen, and it is also in your bulletin. All right, good morning again. I'm Bud Taylor, and I'd like to welcome you to our church service this morning at the McPherson Church of the Brethren. We're glad you could be here. And a special welcome to those of you worshiping with us on Channel 13. Do you have any announcements or visitors that you would like to introduce?
Good morning. I'm Karen Hoke. And you probably noticed that there's an insert in your bulletin about the photography that's going to happen here and have our pictures taken. And we're trying to find greeters who would greet people as they come in and shuffle them in and out of their appointments, and then make sure they go upstairs and talk to the representative who's going to be showing you your pictures. And so I'm needing a number of people. We have it divided into 3.5-hour slots, and there would be one 2 to 5:30 and 5:30 to 9 on Tuesday through Friday. And then Saturday, there's a morning slot and an afternoon slot. So if you're interested, give us a call or see us right after church, and we've got the list you can sign up for. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kirk McGregor. Reasonable Faith is starting up again this academic year. Our very first meeting will be Monday, August the 27th at 7 p.m. in Moeller 212, and the topic will be, Does Evolution Threaten God? So I hope to see you there.
Okay, so a couple of announcements. One, for those that were going to help out with the service project around the church this afternoon for the students from McPherson College, that has been canceled due to a little bit of rain. We don't think painting the stripes is going to work very well when they're underwater. And we didn't think that having a bunch of first-year students to McPherson area working in wet, stinky mulch would be a good way to be hospitable. And so we're going to postpone those two activities, which is why there are pallets of mulch behind us. Thank you, Al Wagner, for getting it. Thank you, Marion Godfrey, for helping deliver it as well. But it'll still be there until we can find a time to put it all in. And once it dries out, we can paint the stripes. The second one, since Chris and Catherine have been on vacation, I've had the blessing to go down to Wichita and visit Herb Johnson. Anybody know who Herb Johnson is? I hadn't had a chance to meet him until these visits, and he's kind of a funny guy. He's got a good sense of humor, and I am proud and happy and excited to announce that on Friday, he was talking, he had gotten up, and he's doing really well, and his family thanks all of you, all of us, for our prayers, our cards, our thoughts, and our love. So thank you.
Good morning, I'm Laura Schumming. It's time again to start thinking about Kingdom Kids. So if any kids are out there that haven't registered, make sure you do that on the webpage. Also, we're looking for a couple more volunteers to help on Wednesday nights. This year it'll be from 6 to 7. So if you're free and have any interest, even occasionally, please let me know.
My name is Beverly Minnick, and my husband Dale left this morning for Haiti. So I'd like you to remember him in prayers. Since they weren't allowed to come to annual conference, he's gone over to Haiti to work the budget for next year. So just remember him. He's on his way to Florida right now, and then he'll get this afternoon, get on a plane to go to Haiti.
Now let us continue our morning service.
please hear this call to worship. We say we long for wisdom, but actually we seem to prefer our own counsel. We turn away from wisdom's ideas and ignore the possibilities and promise that come from life together. We drown out wisdom as she seeks to get our attention. We believe that we know better, or would prefer to decide where we make her welcome. As we worship today, may we set aside our self-righteousness and awaken anew to wisdom, to Sophia. May we be open to walking in the ways of wisdom and listen to the promise she brings each and every day. Please rise for the opening song. Please be seated. A new day is upon us. Students everywhere and of all ages are beginning new academic journeys on campuses all over the globe. It seems, regardless of the season we are in, that life continues to go on. The adventure continues. As much as the world may change, and it does so quickly, almost overnight at times, there is still one safe space, a refuge, and that should be the church and other places of worship. We, the church, must remain the place that is always open to the Spirit and wherever the Spirit may take us. But we do so anchored in our call to be a safe place, a hiding place, a refuge. So as we give this morning, we do so answering the call to be the church. Will the ushers please come forward and accept our gifts? Will you pray with me? Holy God, thank you. Thank you for music that reaches deep into our soul and lifts us into a space where you meet us and dance with us. Thank you for sisters and brothers who sit with us and hold our hands in seasons of mourning and grief. Thank you for celebrations of life and healing. We ask, O God, that you take these gifts we offer and use them to continue to help us to create safe spaces and refuges for those seeking asylum from a world that is just simply ripped apart by violence and hatred. May we be the church through your hands, O God. In Jesus' name, amen. Will the children please come forward for the children's time?
How was your first couple days of school?
Good.
Good? All right. Glad to hear that. Glad to hear that. Let's see if we've got a couple coming down from the balcony, maybe. Okay, so everybody had a good couple days of school?
Yes.
Yep. Good job. Good job. Okay, we're going to have a couple coming on down. Hey, come join us. Okay? They're coming. Yeah, a long ways to come from. And we're up in the balcony. Okay? You guys want to come around just a little closer so we can get in? Good job. Okay, I have a question to ask. Actually, I have two questions to ask you. Laura, you going to come sit with me? Laura, here. You going to come sit with me? Right here. There we go. It's good to have you here. Okay. So, who's a smarty? Do we have? You're a smarty. You are a smarty. You're a smarty. You're a smarty. Anybody else? You're a smarty. Yeah. Claire, are you a smarty? Yeah, I think you are. Everybody's a smarty. What does it mean to be smart? What does it mean?
I mean, do you know most of the things that other people may not know and you try to teach them to them?
Okay, good. To be a smarty, do we have to know everything?
No.
No, we don't. And do I have to be a smarty in the way you're a smarty? So maybe you know something I don't know, I know something you know. Is that okay? Yeah. Who's the smartest person you know? Who's the smartest person you know?
Elliot.
Elliot's the smart. And is he in your class?
No.
No. Okay, but he's cousins. Got it. Who's the smartest person you know? Sky. Sky's a pretty smart kid, isn't he? Yeah, he is right there. He is right there. Who's the smartest person you know? Sky and Jace and Blaine. So we all know smart people, right? Okay, so thumbs up, it's good to be a smart person, right? But I'm going to tell you something else. I know something that it's better to be than just a smart person. It's also to be a kind person, also to be a wise person. What does that mean when you're a wise person? Yeah.
Kind of like being brave and you like speak out.
Okay, so you're brave and you're speaking out, yeah?
Like you say kind words.
You say kind words. Good job, good job. Okay. Do you know when you have wisdom or when you're a wise person, it means that you use that smart stuff you know and you make good choices with it. I'm going to give you an example. Last week, some of you weren't here, but I had peanut M&Ms 2 weeks ago. Okay, do you remember that? And I said, I like peanut M&Ms, right, Bailey? And sometimes I know that a lot of peanut M&Ms are not really good for you to eat all the time, that you need to eat other things. But sometimes, even though maybe there's a good apple in the refrigerator, I still get my peanut M&Ms. So am I making a wise choice? No. I know in my head what I should be doing, but I don't always make the wise choice. So let's think about some other choices we could make. What about if we have, put that in your mouth. What about if we have a lot of money? Now, what are we thinking we should do with some of that money? What do you think?
Share with homeless people.
Share with homeless people, okay? Do we always do that? No. Do we always make that wise choice? No. How many of you know in your heads that when you see a red light, you should stop and not walk across the street? You know what? Sometimes downtown I see people and it's a red stoplight and they're looking this way, and they say, oh, no cars coming, I'm going to go ahead and cross the street. Is that a wise choice?
No.
No.
You should look twice.
You should look twice and wait for that green light. That would be the wise choice.
No.
Yep.
After that red light, you go for that green light.
Yeah, you're exactly right. You're going to wait for that green light, okay? What if you're out on the playground and you're swinging on the swing and you want to stop and just, you know in your head you're not supposed to jump, but the teacher's not watching?
You're supposed to pull your, you shouldn't do it anyway.
You shouldn't do it anyway. Would that be the wise choice? Yes.
Just pull your feet back. And
Yeah, yeah. Who is the wisest person that you know? Yeah.
God.
God. And how do we know that
Dad.
God is so wise?
And
Daddy's wise.
And my mom, Grandma died.
I know, and that makes us all very sad, doesn't it? Yes, we are all very sad about that, sweetie. So God is a wise person. How can God help us to be wise? What can we do? Yeah.
Listen to him.
Listen to God. Can we read the Bible? Because God has a lot of wisdom, and we need to listen to God, read the Bible, listen to our Sunday school lessons, listen on Wednesdays, and we can gain guidance from God, okay? I have Smarties here today. I couldn't find any candy that says wise candy, but as you take your Smartie, I want you to think it's good to be smarty, but it's also better to be wise and make those good choices, all right? So before you go, make sure you take a Smartie. And I will see you guys next week. There you go, ma'am. You're going to get a Smartie. Thank you. You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
You are welcome. You're going to share with somebody behind you? There you go. Hey. Thank you.
Oh, you can't have two.
Please join me in the unison prayer of the people found in their bulletin and on the screen. Please pray with me. Help us, O God, to be wise, to be discerning. Grant us wisdom to know good from evil. Grant us wisdom to assess the clamoring voices and concerns with which we are daily bombarded. Grant us wisdom so that we might learn to be accepting of all the diverse people you have created. Grant us wisdom to be peacemakers and mediators of understanding where there is conflict. Grant us wisdom when we are in conflict to make it possible for us and for those with whom we differ to move forward hand in hand. Grant us wisdom not to violate any of your creatures by discriminating against them. Grant us wisdom to discern what is of ultimate value and make wise choices for our souls. O God, grant us discernment. Grant us the will to be faithful. Grant us the power to love, and help us to be wise. Amen. Our scripture focus this morning comes from a rather difficult letter in the New Testament, the book of Ephesians. And as Catherine shared a couple of weeks ago, the authorship of Ephesians isn't really well known. We do know that the author, whether Paul or a student of Paul or even generations after Paul, was dealing with conflict within a church. And oftentimes in conflict, the author tries their best to offer wisdom and insight on how to help people live together in the beloved community. And so we come to Ephesians 5:15 through 20 because two reasons. One is the lectionary text. Otherwise, I would probably jump over it and skip it altogether. But B, because I think there is indeed something to be said in the wisdom in these words. Here, Ephesians 5:15 through 20. Be careful then how you live, not as unwise people, but as wise, making the most of the time, because the days are evil. So do not be foolish, but understand what the will of God is. Do not get drunk with wine, for that is debauchery, but be filled with the Spirit as you sing psalms and hymns and spiritual songs among yourselves, singing and making melody to the Lord in your hearts, giving thanks to God the Creator at all times and for everything in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ. We all, every one of us, need people to pour into us. And what I mean by that, we need women and men who are willing to invest in us, who believe in us, who encourage us, who challenge us, and yes, even hold us accountable. It takes more than one person, even parents, more than our parents, to help form us into holistic persons who embody the wisdom that the author of Ephesians is writing about. This level of wisdom flows as much from personal experience and our personal journeys as it does from the shalom, the salam of God. Reflecting on this truth, I tried to create a list of names of folks who have spoken life, poured life into me, but the list is simply too extensive. There is really no way for me to use that list in a time-sensitive way on a Sunday morning and honor all that they've done for me. Because I've wanted to honor the journey and the sisters and brothers who have spent a lot of time helping nurture my path. But also, the challenge was, as I sat in my office reflecting, thinking, rehearsing the list of names, it created a kind of a writer's block. I'm staring as that cursor would move from one edge of the screen to the other, only time and time again to hit delete, 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 and find itself on the other side with a blank screen before me. Deleting all the fluff, and yes, it was fluff, that was muddying the frame. As I reflect on this reality and the struggle of writing this sermon, I thought, well, maybe it's because we as a church family are in a very pain-filled season. We as a community of faith have had a very hard and tumultuous 2 weeks. And as I typed word after word, I felt this nagging call to share, to shed light on, to speak about what we might all be feeling. But even then, even though I felt called and pulled to be honest about our current context as a grieving, questioning community, once again, I just stared at a blank screen. I wrote fluff, deleted fluff. I would sigh, and this continued for most of the time this week as I tried to craft the message. With so much flowing in and out of my mind, with so much that I want to highlight and honor, it seems like maybe, just maybe, my own writing sessions were chaotic and full of turmoil. More of that than even peace or wisdom-filled. I really was ready to throw my desktop out the window of my little office, but I did not. Properties is still there. It still works very well, thank you. I might have been frustrated, but I'm still sane and wise enough to walk away when writing hits wall after wall after wall, when the muse that often guides my hand seems absent or on vacation. So I thought, well, this isn't working for me. Maybe I'll change the topic. Maybe I'll skip to another part of the text, another part of the canon, and go in a whole new direction. I blamed the text as the perpetrator of my writer's block. The author of Ephesians is to blame. As I said, Catherine shared 2 weeks ago, the author could have been anyone associated with Paul, as it was normal practice in Hellenistic world to write in the name of a teacher or a mentor. It wasn't wrong. It was a normal practice. And so the letter written in the name of Paul might not have been written by Paul, but someone who was associated with Paul, who knew Paul, who understood Paul, and so felt confident enough to do so, even though it may have been decades later. The author of Ephesians, as much as we want to argue for historical criticism's sake, who the author is really, truly doesn't matter. It's not that big of a deal, because what we're trying to figure out is what the intended message was, what the context of the letter was. And that's what makes Ephesians so challenging to exegete. Not that it isn't wonderfully written, and it necessarily isn't the best Greek. No, that's not what makes it challenging. What makes it hard to read is because the messages are not what we believe what it means to be a member of a community of faith, what it means to be women and men of faith. One of the reasons we question Paul's authorship of Ephesians is because the author spends so much time creating a hierarchy in gender roles in marriages and a church. Many pastors in traditional views have used Ephesians, in fact, the verses following our text for this morning, as a way to create a hierarchy in marriage where the woman submits to the husband. This is not of God, by the way. God does not intend for a submission in marriage in that way. It is not healthy. It is not Christ-like. So as I said, I've tried to avoid these chapters time and time again in 15 years of ministry, because as I read them, my soul cringes a little bit. I have this visceral reaction like I've stumbled upon a scene in a movie or a play that makes you really uncomfortable. Not because the truth on the screen or the stage is revealing something within me that needs to be addressed, but because what I see, what I experience, what drama is unfolding contradicts everything I hold true to what it means to be a person of faith. So as I read this section of Ephesians, I wonder, more times than I want to admit, about the lectionary's need to continue to put it in the lectionary. I continue to question these brilliant men and women, why it pops up in the liturgical calendar every 3 years. The anxiety with the text and my emotions with the text overwhelm me and have the last couple of weeks on top of everything else. And I just wanted to throw the lectionary and the text out the window with my computer. But then I took a breath. I stopped. I quieted my mind and I prayed. My mind stopped racing, and I was able to see a picture for this message. First and foremost, I was reminded that it was brilliant people created the lectionary, smarter than I am, more educated than I am, more versed in the text and canon than I could ever be. So maybe I shouldn't throw the baby out with the bathwater. But as the message of the text came to mind, it came to the recesses of my mind, it came to view, it wasn't words after all that I was looking at on the screen. It wasn't a book, it wasn't an author, it wasn't a video or a commentary that I was seeing in my mind. The image forming from the void of my memory was the name of a person who spoke so much life into one beautiful summer, a summer that I spent doing clinical pastoral education, also known as CPE. To those of you who have endured the class or have led a class or been a part of a CPE, raise your hand. It's fun, right? Not so much. To those of us who've endured this class, CPE is something akin to, well, I call it emotional or spiritual CrossFit. And if you don't know what CrossFit is, it is simply this. It is an insane workout that leaves the individual exhausted, spent, and ready to crawl out of the gym. My CPE experience every day, I felt like I was crawling out of the hospital, retreating to some place, trying to reflect on what had just happened. CPE for me was just like that. Day in and day out, we would gather as a class, and our teacher would challenge us, ask us questions, and then send us out onto the floors to learn, to experience what it means to sit with women and with men who would rather be anywhere else than the hospital. The men and women came to that hospital reluctantly because the patients knew that the stares would come. They knew that the questions about sexual choices and addictions would flow. They knew that the shame that they were able to mask on the streets of Dayton would be unavoidable as each of them were prodded and poked and tested. I had no idea what I had gotten myself into. I was a small town kid from the middle of Kansas who was serving a rural church north of Dayton. Away from the chaos and life that is Dayton, I had no clue what was about to happen to me. I was out of my element. I was confused, scared, anxious, not excited at all. I wasn't looking forward to sitting with people that I didn't know, hearing their pain-filled stories, hoping that I could find one word that might bring a little bit of hope or presence or peace. Truly, as I talked to my professors at seminary, I wanted to be anywhere else that summer than at Grandview Hospital in Dayton. But for those that have been through CPE, that's exactly where I needed to be. As part of the process, once a week, each student has to present a case study on a patient they had visited. And this is the painful piece. As you present your case study, your peers begin to interrogate you, not ask general questions, literally an interrogation as they peel away the layers of your faith formation and begin to ask you prodding questions of why you write this word, or why are you looking at it this way, or what's motivating you to do this? Why'd you do this? Why'd you do this? And I'm sitting there going, oh my goodness, why am I in this? I just want to get credit and graduate. But sitting in that circle, as my peers prodded, as my professors prodded, even though it was the most anxiety I've ever felt in a classroom, and it was painful, I felt something change within me. I may not have wanted to be there, but I am a healthier, more whole person because of the journey. Because on that journey, my mentor, and this is where the message took the focus for today. My mentor, his name was Ricardo, was the one who walked with me through my doubts and failures of CPE. And it was his face, his name, his image that came to mind as I struggled with this message. Ricardo was elemental in making that summer the transformative experience it was. Ricardo pastored an urban church in Dayton and was the chaplain for the mental health unit at Grandview. For those that aren't aware, the mental health unit is an incredible experience, but also frightening if you get a chance to spend time there. Ricardo was working towards a master's in counseling, specifically mental illness and addiction. Dayton, like so many larger cities, has many men and women suffering from mental illness and addiction, many of them taken to the streets trying to survive on a day-to-day basis, simply hoping that they wake up the next day. This is where Ricardo's urban ministry was focused and set. Ricardo wanted to be a voice of hope, of peace, of love in the storm of addiction raging in Dayton. Today, we're all aware of the opiate epidemic that seems to be stretching across the United States. For reference, that part of Ohio, Dayton, Moraine, where GM used to employ so many people and has since decided to just withdraw, that is the hub of the opiate epidemic in the United States. There are more men and women suffering from addiction in that part of Dayton, of Ohio, percentage-wise, the entire country. And that's where Ricardo is ministering. And it was bad when I was there 10 years ago. Why is it such a hub? Because it's the perfect storm. It is high unemployment, little hope. It's the crossroads of I-70 and I-75. And so two main routes go north and south and east and west, meet right in Dayton. It becomes the perfect place for drugs to be trafficked and to be moved. And as I said, there's no hope for very few of them. So in that place, in that mecca of addiction and pain, Ricardo finds his ministry. Ricardo finds hope. Ricardo finds light. He is, without question, the most street smart person I have ever met. And that's saying a lot. But it's not just street smarts that he has. You see, Ricardo is wise enough to spark the conscience of academics and CEOs while breaking bread with the person sleeping under cardboard, shaking from the cold, suffering from withdrawal. I started this message, today's message, suggesting that it takes a village to help form us as whole persons. That summer, through the ministry of my CPE, Bashert, my teacher, my peers and classmates, but most importantly, Ricardo, my mentor, that summer, steps were added in my own journey into ministry that helped me mature and grow, and to also recognize that there were two moments that summer that taught me the wisdom of God, both dealing with Ricardo. Ricardo's African American, and one of our class times, and again, if you've been in CP, you know this routine, a peer decided to share his case study. And in the process of sharing his case study, he used racially insensitive language. And I, being the good brother and social justice person that I was ready to just come after my peer and just hold him accountable and call him out. I looked over at Ricardo with that kind of grin on my face that, yeah, here it comes. Ricardo spoke first, and I was ready for the tongue lashing that he would unleash on my brother and peer. But instead of calling him out and embarrassing him in front of our entire class, instead of speaking truth to power in a way that would break our classmate, Ricardo asked him a powerful, poignant, probing question. I can't remember the question. I tried. But the question wasn't mine, and it wasn't for me. But I do remember the godly reaction. I sat there speechless. I had been led to believe that in the face of injustice, we have to speak loud and proud and take a platform and jump on our soapbox. We must break the chains of oppression and racism. And here we are in a safe classroom with the expectation that we're going to tear each other apart and rip into each other's souls. And Ricardo, the one who should have been the angriest and the most offended, didn't even react. He didn't yell. He didn't call out the closet racist remark. No. Instead, he asked a question. And he did so with such a peace and a presence that our classmate was forced to think hard and deep. We could see our classmate wrestling with Ricardo's question, and then it was as if the Sophia of God flowed in and revealed so much because our classmate got it. He realized how harmful his words had been. Our friend did the most human thing at this point, and the godliest thing I've ever witnessed or experienced in a class setting. Our peer repented. He asked all of us for forgiveness, and then he walked over to Ricardo, got on his knees, and apologized personally. At that moment, all the walls broke down and we wept, each of us, including Ricardo. And we went away changed, different, holier. Not because of some flippant racist remark went unchallenged. No, that's not why we left changed. We left because in that space, when justified reactionary anger could have been the response and it would have been okay, the Sophia of God led Ricardo to ask a question. The question that led to healing and understanding and wholeness. We, each one of us in that circle, grew that day because in that space, when we were all vulnerable and ready, God's wisdom flowed in and taught us the power of love and grace and mercy. Ricardo could have ripped him apart, but that would have achieved nothing. Instead, like the author of Ephesians suggested, Ricardo chose to live immersed in the Sophia of God, the Shalom of God. God's peace empowered him to do exactly what he should do. Be patient, be kind, be loving. the other moment that Ricardo spoke life into me. And I think this is relevant to why I struggled with the message. I was visiting this young woman who, in her 20s, has spent her entire life battling spina bifida and was in a wheelchair and was just submitting to this life and had found peace in this life and had just recognized this was going to be her story. And she was the kind of person that when you went into her room, she had such a powerful light and brilliance about her that you felt God's Spirit flowing into that space just from her. And so what I would do on purpose is I would visit. I had a painful floor. I had the floor where all the patients went because they were addicts or they're on the end of life cycle or they come through some really painful journey. That was the floor I was on. So day in and day out, I would just get overwhelmed in sorrow and sadness. And so I would go visit her. And she would be my reprieve, my respite, my break. And I'd walk in and she would smile and she would greet me by my first name and her mom would be there most of the time and we would just sit and we would worship. We would worship in profound ways in her hospital room. And throughout that whole summer, for 2 whole months, we had hope that they were going to find a way to help her live a longer life. She was looking at the end of life, but she had hope. The hospital said, there's hope, there's hope, there's hope. And so we kept praying and believing that hope would come. I went in one day, and it was the only day in the entire summer, even after this experience, where she didn't say a word to me. I walked in, and she just looked away, and I could tell there was no light that day. Her mom said, Jerry, we got bad news. The hospital said there's nothing they can do. There's nothing they can do. And so she was given this terrible message that basically they should plan and prepare for what was inevitable. I was angrier at God than I've ever been after leaving that space, and so I did what you're supposed to do. I sought my mentor, Ricardo. And I yelled and I screamed, and Ricardo just heard my words of anger, and he just listened. He just sat there. And then he said, Jerry, have you ever been to our chapel? No, Ricardo, I haven't. He goes, you've been here all summer so far, and you've not stepped into our chapel not once? No. Well, maybe you should, he said. I said, okay. He goes, take the rest of the day off if you have to. I will cover for you. Go. Go sit in the chapel and just yell, scream, do whatever you need to do in that safe space. And so at Grandview Hospital, there's this beautiful chapel. They're Seventh-day Adventists, and I worshiped with Seventh-day Adventists all summer, and I'm so thankful I did. As I sat down, it was like this weight was on my shoulders, and I just started lamenting and crying and weeping and yelling and screaming, and it felt safe. It felt cathartic. And as I stood up finally, after I don't know how long I was there, I realized another part of Ricardo's wisdom. He taught me sometimes it's okay to remove yourself and go recharge your spiritual batteries. And so I went back and I found him again. I said, Ricardo, it worked. And then he asked this question. He goes, Jerry, when was the last time you dipped your sponge into God's grace? He goes, that's what the chapel's for. So whenever you need it, you go back in and you dip that sponge into God's grace and you recharge yourself, because you're not going to do anybody any good if you yourself are broken. Thank you, Ricardo. And then he said, one more word of wisdom for you, Jerry. Why do you feel the need to always have an answer for somebody? We weren't in the class, dadgummit. He wasn't supposed to ask me this question here. And I said, well, Ricardo, because I was raised, you're supposed to have the answer. And he goes, there is no answer to this. Why can't you just sit like I did with you and be present? Brothers and sisters, I don't have an answer for the season we're in. I don't have the answer for the shocking news we've had the last couple of weeks. I don't have the answer for the grief, the mourning, the weeping that we are all doing, whether internally or externally. But I do have this, that if we sit together, even just in silence, we will be okay. We will be okay. That, for me, was the wisdom of God, learning to shut up and just be with people and not have to be right. So may we all journey together, even in the awkward silence of ministry. Please rise for the sending song. each person we meet becomes an invitation to offer the Sophia, the shalom of God to. Or we offer an alternative which brings no peace. Because anxiety and stress feel more like the norm right now than any peace or tranquility. So it seems our world could use some more folks who ask the great questions, just as Jesus did, just like Ricardo did. So may we all be conduits of God's love, of God's mercy, of God's wisdom. And may we all learn to ask great questions, or even learn how just to sit in silence. Go in love, go in peace. Amen.